Hey, welcome back to another Just 5 Mins. Episode 160. I don't know, I'm more surprised myself than anybody else has to be surprised, by the way. Anyway, goodbye WordPress, hello WordPress. WordPress, yes, that weird platform. It's not weird, but you know what I mean. It's, I don't know, depending on where you look, but roughly they reckon around about 40% of websites. I don't know now with all the AI stuff, but it was something like about 40% of websites run on WordPress. Okay, so if you don't know WordPress, it's been around for a long time, and it's essentially a, you know, you can build a content management system with it. Well, it is a content management system ultimately, and you can build apps and you know, websites, should I say, that really make it quite easy for an end user. Although, as most people who have used WordPress would say, if you're using a really basic one and it's just got basic content, then fair enough. Yeah, you can definitely do that. But if you've got maybe more complex business sort of requirements, you start getting into where you need plugins. So a plugin is like some extra functionality. And there is a massive ecosystem for WordPress, to be fair. So, you know, there's loads of things to make where you've got lovely carousel-like scrolling images and all these sorts of things. But it is a pretty stable platform in a lot of ways. But there are some deficiencies that, because it came from a long time ago, it's all based on PHP underneath and ultimately JavaScript, HTML, CSS at the front end. There's nothing wrong with how it works. It usually works on MySQL as a back-end database, but I don't believe that is the only choice these days. But I think it does have a lot of ties with MySQL, so we'll just leave it there. But ultimately, it's like I say, the ecosystem, all these plugins, you know, that you, by the way, some of them are not cheap. You know, there's a whole industry that built up around over the last decade or more of you know, creating these plugins that you buy and license, and let's face it, they're all like essentially on a subscription. So, you know, the subscriptions, the gift that keeps on giving to the person that you're paying. Anyway, but yeah, so there's nothing wrong with WordPress. I use it quite a bit. You know, there's a lot of sites. I look after a few WordPress sites and so on. But, you know, and it's relatively easy to get around. Although, like I said, it can get complex if your website is more complex, you know, that you end up then having to do a lot of stuff with, like I said, plugins and management of stuff and whatever. But incidentally, WooCommerce, which is quite a popular e-commerce platform, is essentially built on WordPress. So love it or hate it, it is actually quite a good starter. Well, actually, not just starter. I mean, it is being used by some rather large companies that I've seen. So in my day job of integration, you know, we still see quite a lot of WordPress / WooCommerce integrations. And of late, meaning the last year or so, you know, WordPress like Shopify and lots of these others have introduced sort of native B2B. So a lot of this WooCommerce stuff was B2C, business to consumer. But, you know, certainly there's been a big push to get B2B there. There were plugins around and still are plugins around that maybe do things slightly different, better or whatever. Anyway, but that's a big ramble about WordPress. So why am I saying goodbye to WordPress and hello WordPress? Well, it's the usual link bait sort of title. But Cloudflare, if you don't know who Cloudflare are, you know, that's another subject for another day. But they have a massive infrastructure around the world where people can, protect their, sites by having, Cloudflare sort of like, oh, there's loads of products in it. I don't want to go into that right now. Just have a look for cloudflare.com and you'll get the idea. But Cloudflare have got quite a few interesting products over the last few years. Everything from reverse proxies and goodness knows what. There's lots of weird and wonderful stuff there. But they've also got a lot of developer software sort of related products as well. So serverless functions that you've got on Azure and AWS, Lambda, they've got worker, Cloudflare workers or something. And, that's like a serverless platform. There's so much I can't really cover right now. But they recently, with all the advancement of AI coding, this is a bit obscure if you're not a developer, and certainly if you're not a developer in the React JavaScript world, maybe, is their team at Cloudflare did something where Next.js has been a big back-end project that's been around again for quite a few years now, and a lot of React developers use Next.js. Okay, and to be honest, if you use any of these Replit, Lovable or whatever, it's probably using Next.js at the back end. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, but the weird thing is the team that I'm talking about actually rebuilt Next.js in about a week using AI coding agents. Anyway, that's another story for another time. But they looked at WordPress and realized what's the problem there. Well, it's showing its age maybe based on the technology that was around at the time. There's nothing wrong with WordPress, but it's showing its age a bit. And things like those plugins that I was talking about, they're inherently not that safe, because when you create a plugin as a provider, you've got access to, when you install it so if you're a consumer and you say, oh, that plugin looks nice, I'll put it on my WordPress site. It's essentially got access to your whole WordPress platform, including data and all sorts of things. Now, there have been some moves. I don't want to make it like, oh, it's all bad. There have been some moves to make that a lot more secure over the last few years, but ultimately it's the way it was originally developed, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're saying WordPress is it's nearly 24 years old, as of 2026. That's pretty good going, isn't it? So anyway, there are a few providers that have taken WordPress and host it for you, that make it more secure, all that sort of stuff. But again, it's like you're battling against an older set of technology. So the Cloudflare team, who rewrote Next.js in a week, basically have got a new CMS called EM Dash. Okay, don't know if that's as catchy as WordPress, but anyway, let's not worry about that. But they've written it from the ground up. But interestingly, what they're trying to do, it's only in preview at the moment, so just bear with on this one. But they've got some quite wide sort of like scoping of aims, really. They want to be compatible with WordPress functionality. So, but what they're saying is no WordPress code was used to create EM Dash. Okay, it's open source, fully MIT, a permissive MIT license, and the initial look, it is preview at the moment, does look and feel and walks and talks like WordPress, but it's built completely on TypeScript. Okay, so it's a bit more modern. It's not using PHP. It's using TypeScript at the back end as well as the front end. If you don't know what that means, don't worry right now. But ultimately, the way that they're structuring the plugin, so WordPress WordPress plugin architecture is fundamentally insecure. That's what they say. 96% of security issues for a WordPress site originates in plugins, basically. You know, this is what I'm going back to. It might be that you've got really good plugin developers and they're doing all the right things, but then there's some that either are maliciously doing something or maybe they don't even realize. And especially with all the AI stuff these days, you could get AI to write a plugin for WordPress, but if you don't know what it's doing, yeah, you know, what's the point? So it's this plugin mentality where it's got access to pretty much everything in your WordPress site. Okay, like I say, there are ways to lock things down and do things, but you do need to know a level of detail to get to that point. Okay, so the idea is that there's a good article. I'll send you the article in the link anyway. But the plugin is a lot more. It's also, again, it's not knocking WordPress, but when I've created plugins for WordPress, they're a bit clunky. You know, the stuff that you have to do. But again, it's what you get used to, isn't it? If you were writing plugins all of the time, it wouldn't seem like anything crazy. But if you're just dipping in every now and again, I found it a little bit, you know, a little bit clunky. So the plugin structure in EM Dash, you know, the spiritual successor of WordPress, looks so much cleaner. It's all TypeScript, i.e. JavaScript underneath, but TypeScript. But you have explicit sort of capabilities. You say you want to read content, email send. So it's basically like having scopes, if you're used to that word. So when you say, you know, I'm going to allow this thing on my site, you give it a scope of, yeah, you can look at my content, you can do this, you can do that. You may have, you know, a few of these scopes that you can be very selective with about what you can access ultimately. Okay, so the plugin structure, way easier from a coding perspective, but also way more secure because the end user has to accept that you're going to use these scopes. Okay, so do you want this plugin to access this, 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 and this? And if you're not comfortable with that, you can say, no, I don't want it. Go away plugin. I'll find another one that's got less security things. But it seems to be a lot more locked down. So the other thing as well is that the plugin marketplace, well, with EM Dash, because it's a bit more open, maybe you can, and this is true of WordPress really as well. You can literally, if you're a plugin developer, you can sell these independently. You know, they're no, you know, there's no affiliation there. You can literally have your own marketplace, basically. So anyway, there's some interesting things with this. As my good friend Tim did mention, though, it is like everything, isn't it? It's the adoption rate. I mean, WordPress, like I said, 24 years. Are people going to take possibly very complex WordPress sites and migrate? Well, you know, I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm guessing it might be no. Why? You know, it's like the don't fix if it's not broken sort of thing. But at the same time, if these guys are doing where they're trying to build the compatibility, and if there's a good chance that you can migrate WordPress to EM Dash in a very seamless way. I don't know about the plugins because that looks to be a little bit more complicated, how you would be able to do that. But again, if it gets the adoption rate, maybe these plugin developers go and say, well, actually, we'll go and, you know, write these plugins for EM Dash as well, or maybe they switch their focus. It is preview at the moment, so, you know, it's going to take a little while longer, even with AI, to actually get that to, you know, a stable release at least. So yeah, you know, it is an interesting, sort of what they're trying to achieve here. It's definitely worth a close eye on if you are in the WordPress world. It certainly looks like it's going to be easier to manage, deploy, build plugins more secure, all of that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's what I've got for this time. Way over 5 minutes. I mean, it is ridiculous, isn't it? But anyway, if you got this far, well done. I will send you a medal. Just let me know in the comments, because you deserve it. But anyway, wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a good day, a good week, and we'll catch you on the next one.